a Q&A session. It's a panel where everybody is welcome to intervene and to contribute to the discussion. So I will briefly introduce the 6 topics of the panel. Actually, some of them have been already touched during the previous panels. Anyway, if you feel comfortable to intervene again and to to contribute with new perspectives on the already mentioned topics, you're free to do. We're going to start with the transnational list, which is a proposal that came on the background of Brexit, and it's quite a new idea, and it's actually one of the most provocative idea. And I will start with the invited guests from the main political families that are present here in Timișoara. So please.
Thank you. So the proposal to create a transnational list comes from what do we do with the seats vacated by the British. So the first thing I want to say is that I hope this never happens.
You are still hoping, right?
Thank you.
So you could be elected on a transnational list if you stay.
I am not going to give up until the moment we leave, and then the moment we leave, I will start campaigning to join again. So first, I hope it doesn't happen. Secondly, as a Brit, I don't think it's appropriate for me to have an opinion on what happens to the seats that we leave, because if we leave, we leave. But I'm a vice president of ALDE, and in that capacity, I like the idea of transnational lists. ALDE has had a favourable opinion for some time. It fits nicely with the Spitzenkandidat process in terms of creating a demos that operates across Europe. So personally, I'm in favour. I recognise there are potential issues around having MEPs with a different mandate, but a lot of political systems have elected representatives with a slightly different mandate, you know, lists and directly elected, and I think it works perfectly well.
Thank you. So indeed, this idea of the transnational lists has came some years ago, I would say around the 2004, correctly if it's not correct. We were in Rome with the European Green Party, and that moment my president, Daniel Cohn-Bendit, who is a clear European, but also he has a problem of identity because he's German, he's French, he's Jewish, he has everything, and he really hoped that we will create a European public space in order to get really not only the national debate but also the European debate on the table, and therefore he was convinced that if we will have this transnational list, this will be an extra instrument in order to bring this European debate. We didn't change our mind. We are very much in favor. Of course, if I try to find out how it will work, because I follow a little bit the debate this morning, if you allow me very briefly to say, is nobody has very clear ideas. So the first thing is we have to assure the countries, the remaining countries, so with the exception of UK, because we are talking about the seats of the UK, that they will not lose seats. So you have 32 seats, you will keep them, and everybody will keep them. So the question is, and it will be also the question on the electoral system. The electoral system will remain as it is, even if ideally we hope that in the future we will have a system which brings more close the citizens to the MEP So when somebody today said, and I'm sorry, I don't remember who, that maybe one way is to have preference here involved is a good idea, but if we have to go even farther to have electoral law which brings closer this idea, we are in favor, but the rest is the transnational list. So if I have to think how it will be, the idea is that you will have probably the moment you vote, one list from your national country, and then the second one, which will be the transnational list. The transnational list, they will be decided the way you put the candidates by the political parties, and you will have the possibility to vote for both. Of course, you can have problems that you decide that you want at the national level to go for a liberal, at the European level to go for a green. I mean, that is something that it can happen, but indeed what happens there is that you really create this space which is needed for having a European debate, and not only that, you create that space that the parliamentarians, they will not only feel that I have been elected in France, I have to deliver for France. They will have the feeling that I have been elected in Europe and I have really to represent 540 million of Europeans and not only the national interests. So you overcome the nationalization of the debate and also the nationalization of our parliamentarians, because you really create this dynamic towards the European elections. And I have 1 second to say an extra thing, and I'll stop because I talk too much, is that the problem is also that don't underestimate that there is a real renationalization. Not only because of the nationalism, not only because of what's going on in the council, but because there is a real renationalization of the institutions. It happens also in the European Parliament, which I know best. For example, the civil servants or the people working for the political groups, they have less relevance than the assistants of the MEPs. And you have, in the beginning, you had 2-3 assistants. Now you can have even 4 assistants. And of course, this idea of renationalize the debate and losing this balance you need between European dimension and national dimension, it is important really to break that. So that's why we are in favor. And by the way, the Parliament is split. We were expecting December that the 2 big groups, they will find an agreement on this report before we send it to the Council. My latest news is that there is no agreement and that we don't even know if this Parliament will be able to deliver, which of course is one step, because this has to go to the Council, and there is a different business because in the Council you need unanimity, and therefore it will not be easy for 2019, but because life is long, we have to opt for 2000, the next 24, but putting the pressure now, and also, that also will be the way for you to be present maybe in all political groups and not only in the groups that you have because of the majorities and because of the national list, you manage to get MEPs. So it's only in the advantage of not only the big countries but also of the small countries.
Yes, I really agree what Vula say. I would add something. What is interesting now is that for the first time, one of the main head of state, Emmanuel Macron, backed this idea and put it on the light, because it was a whole project from the European Parliament initiated by the Green Party and also the Liberal Party, because Andrew Duff from the ALDE movement also tried to succeed, but he failed, unfortunately. And if we want this proposal to be a reality, we need also to have the sustain, as we'll say, of the Conseil. And if we don't have the Conseil with us, it would be only a nice wish, but not something realizable. I've heard also the debates this morning, and we can find a solution, not to have only big countries who are representative in this transnational part. It's something more or less like the electoral system for European election that exists currently in Poland. You have a full proportional system, but they are linked to a constituency, so that you can manage, you vote, each European movement have its own list with people coming, of course, from the various European country, member states, and after that, if, I don't know, liberals arrive at the first ranks, they will have seven seats, and we will see inside, to have a global check and balance, we will choose the first of them from Romania, because they are the most powerful, etc., etc. They're the best results. Even if this person is not the number 1, or the number 2, or the number 7. That's the way. It's a bit complex, but the way that Poland is using to have a local representation, but keeping really a proportional system and a kind of equity between the parties. It's a bit complex, but I think it's very important, because this transnational list is a way to make emerge political European class, and also it is the only way to have something as a European global interest in front of nationalistic interests inside the European Parliament. I think it's very important to have that. So the possibility to succeed in for the next election is very straight, but we will continue this battle. We will propose with the government, because I work on that, a new system to reform the vote in France, because in France we fragmented our national representation under Euro region. And so it makes difficult for small party to join the level to be elected, because if you have, as in France, 74 representatives for France at the Euro Parliament, if you divide them in 8, 10, 15 constituency, the level to be elected in one of these constituency is very high. And this is not the philosophy in which the law of 1977, before the first election at the universal suffrage had been established. It was that all that have to be proportional in a level with a level of not over 5%. We admit that, and Great Britain use it. They fragmented a lot to refine something which looks like more majority system than proportional representation. But now, 22 countries over 28 in Europe, even Germany, which is a federal regime, have a single constituency for all the country. You have that. We don't have that in France. So we will change that. And in the new law, we will introduce something about the way we could manage the transnational list, even if we can have it for the next election by preparing for 2024.
As I said in the morning, USR is the most European, pro-European and modern party in Romania. We already fight for electoral reform and to reduce the age from 5% to 3%. And from this perspective, the changing and modernize the electoral system for European election, it's fully supported by our party, not only because there are potentially few places from UK which should be distributed somehow, but because we do believe the European and the should be about those people which are not in the house. We are professionals in these European matters. Those who are here, most of us have good knowledge about European issues. But the people which are going to football match and which are listening music and are playing games with the friends, are not so eager for European knowledge. And from this perspective, elections are somehow more interesting and sometimes maybe fun. So if we manage to impose this transnational list, will be a pressure to the political to be creative, and will be I think, a smart way to better know each other. I mean, will be a challenge from somebody from Romania to get somehow to be known in France or in Netherlands. So having this pressure, it's the natural way to have modern and new politics, because USR and Marsh and ALDE, it's working hard, and also the Greens, and all the parties feel this pressure. The new way, the old way of doing politics is not effective, is not performing any longer. So this new direction means to reinvent the way political could be done at European level, and I think this way of using the transnational list could be an instrument which are forcing us to know each other in terms of European citizens, and also to become more addressed to the citizens. And also from these elements, I think it's a good idea, and we will promote and support it on European level. Even might be a wishful thinking because of the procedures, as you mentioned, for this period.
Sorry, can I add something?
Please.
If we don't have this possibility for the next election, what I have suggested to my movement, we have the possibility to have people, other citizens from European Union, to be elected in France, as in every country. If we can do that, I will ask to En Marche in France to take some people coming from other countries at an possible elected rank. Italians have done that many years ago. And what could be fun, we have some nice representative or personality from Great Britain. For me, Great Britain, on an institutional point of view, they can leave the European space, but they are still European. And it would be nice to have some double nationality person coming from Great Britain, but to have another nationality in Europe, to be elected to the European Parliament, because nearly half of the population of Great Britain have voted against the Brexit. We must take account of that, because we must see the future. I think in the future, if Great Britain really leave the Union, they have to come back at one moment. I don't know how they will do without Europe, even with an agreement with the United States.
So your proposal is to have national European open list?
Yeah.
Yeah? In France, for example.
It exists. We can do that. Technically, we don't have to wait a reform. So possibly, we can ask to the most European figures, and also the most European movement to parties in Europe, to give the example, to ask some people, one very important people from Greece, who is not a candidate on one of his party because he is not affiliated to the right political party to be elected, to come at an elected rank on French, the list of a French political party. I hope En Marche will join that. We can suggest this alternative, because this is a way, if you listen to the speech of Emmanuel Macron at the Sorbonne, he said many things that people didn't realize, understand. He said, okay, we want to be in a way in France of excellency in Europe. If we can do the thing at the European level, before trying to do that with a little circle, we will do that in our country. When we say we want to create an agency for technology of rupture, we decide yet to put 10 billion of euros in such an agency in France, to be merged after that with the creation of something European. We can do what we want to do at the European level. We ask for, we want to begin that at the national level, because we can't say it's not possible, we don't have the possibility because it doesn't exist or other countries don't want. So, do it first in France, or do it first in Romania or in Germany, and then we show the example And that's the best way. It's this kind of pragmatism, using the means we have at the national level to do something we want at the European level is, in my opinion, a nice way to boost the European spirit.
Thank you for your contributions. And well, it's so very that we have this discussion actually about the transnational lists in the context of Brexit. And actually the idea came up during the European Convention preparing the European Constitution. And actually we lost momentum with that European Constitution, and the current Lisbon Treaty is actually a not so good version of the European Constitution. Anyway, well, the floor is yours, and I'm gonna invite you actually to address the next topic also, because it's not only about the proposal of merging the two positions of European Council President and European Commission President, but it's part of a larger discussion about the level of integration. It's about answering the question, how much integration do we want to have in Europe? It's about deepening the process of integration, and the European defense policy is part of the same discussion. So I'm going to give the floor to the public, and we have here members of the Romanian Parliament, also experts invited to address the issue. So Matei Dobrovie, the floor is yours, and Mr. De Gerato, please prepare to intervene.
Thank you for a very interesting discussion and debate. My name is Matei Dobrovie, and I'm a member of the Commission for Foreign Policy of the Romanian Parliament. I'm also the coordinator of the cluster of Foreign Policy, Diaspora and European Affairs of USR. This is a group that meets each week, and there we discuss all of the laws and problems in these commissions. We also draft policy briefs on topics that are on the agenda of the day. We also issue position papers on big events like, for example, the elections in France and En Marche's victory. We made a nice comparison with USR, and also on other events that are not so joyful as referendum in Turkey, for example. Coming back to our topic today, I will address the broader subject of the future of the EU and Romania. The future of the EU from a Romanian perspective. In the cluster, we have made an analysis of the speech of Mr. Juncker, the State of the Union address, this year, and also of the 5 scenarios of the white book on the future of Europe. What we have sorted out as a conclusion is that the best solution, the best scenario for Romania would be scenario 5, more together in all fields. Then Mr. Juncker came up with the 6th scenario, a European Union that should have only one speed for all, a united, a strong, and solidar union. And it's very interesting that the second point of our debate today, the merging of the European Council and the Commission, is in that logic. So merging two bodies that were in a competition of legitimacy sometimes, because we have the European Council that establishes the broad directions of the EU, and the guidelines, so to say, and then we have the European Commission that is responsible for the execution of these decisions. So merging the two together, that means that you create practically a pure executive of the European Union. So it's kind of very similar to a national state. Why do I say this? Because Dan Laze was asking, how much Europe do we want? How much Europe does Romania want? What is our stance on the future of Europe? Analyzing all the scenarios, why is the scenario more Europe favorable to Romania? Because in all other scenarios, Romania has disadvantages. Romania has the disadvantage of not being part of Schengen area and not being part of the Eurozone. And Juncker's speech on the State of the Union had very encouraging signs for Romania. It said that there is a special, that there will be a special financial instrument for the countries that need to join the Eurozone and that aren't already so competitive to make a good move there. And also there was mentioned that he will open the door for Romania's accession to the Schengen zone. So Mr. Juncker proposes to lift the two problems, yes, thank you, that Romania has for going nearer, for coming closer to the nucleum, to the hardcore of Europe, to Germany and France. Because in our program, political program, USR mentioned that it will be the most pro-European party in Romania. And we say clearly, we want that Romania goes closer, deepens its collaboration, its cooperation with the hardcore of Europe, with Germany and France. And therefore, we want more integration. What does that mean? I have identified in these two analyses some domains where Romania can contribute substantially. One is the public prosecutor's office, given the fact that Romania has a good expertise in anti-corruption and justice. We have the DNA that is very well functioning and is a best practice example all across Europe. And another subject would be defense, but I won't get into details. We have experts here. Another topic which I will mention very shortly is regarding the reform of the Eastern Partnership. Romania can contribute very much to this. We have a special relationship with the Republic of Moldova, and also I have some ideas here which could shape this reform. For example, channeling the money and assistance, conditioning it more on reforms, and directing more support to civil societies in countries like Ukraine and Moldova, and not to governments, encouraging the positive actors of change, such as NGOs, such as the independent media and so on, countering the Russian propaganda and counterbalancing the propaganda about the Eurasian Union. And all these factors need to be taken into consideration. I will conclude by saying that it was a very interesting debate until now. And just one last point, considering this merging of the Council and the Commission and overall plan of Juncker, this sixth scenario, a union with only one speed, because Romania was very worried about more speeds, and the union that would exclude it if it is not a member of the Eurozone. Well, we have not a clear data for entering the Eurozone, but in any case, we are worried that the actual power, the current government, can by populist and unsustainable measures, fiscal measures, make us go far away from our goal to join the Eurozone. I hope that will not be happening, and I thank you very much, you all very much for your attention.
Thank you, Matei. Thank you. I'm going to try to keep the 2 or 3 minutes rule of the debate. So please do not kill the sheriff, the deputy, and the moderator for doing that. Please, we have a question here for the transnational list. So,
thank you, Dan. I will have to go back to the topic of transnational lists. I have one special question for the ALDE representative. We were speaking earlier about eligible seats and the composition of the transnational lists. Are big European parties willing to use eligible seats on the transnational list as an instrument to punish those party members that use an anti-European rhetoric at national level? And I'm referring here at the ALDE Romanian party, who has a ridiculous anti-European rhetoric.
Yeah, that particular question about the leverage. I prefer to use the word leverage than punishment. But the question about how we use that leverage hasn't been discussed. But it does bring in a wider point, not just for ALDE, but for all the political groupings, about what you do when you have member parties, or indeed at a European level, what you do about member states who don't behave in a way that you think suits the values. And there's a very fine line between recognizing, especially for liberals, between recognizing freedom of expression and the right on the one hand, on the other hand, on the other hand, saying no, that you are now so far outside our values that you don't have a home here anymore, and that is a very live issue. I don't want to rehearse private conversations too strongly, but I am prepared to say that we at ALDE have had some very robust discussions with ALDE Romania about a number of these issues.
thank you for your question. So once again, our discussion is about integration and the level of integration we are wanting to see in Europe. So there's a topic, there's an elephant in the room, and it's about defense policy, it's about European army inside NATO, and we have an expert here on defense, who is Mr. De Gerato, and the floor is yours, please.
Thank you very much. It's not only the elephant, but also exotic topic. Well, I think that the issue of transnational list is also a very good, how to say, a good opportunity for defense people to immediately identify the vulnerability of this issue. Because my question for this part of discussion was, what about a European platform for the nationality movements to develop their own transnational list? Are we ready to give them an impetus to develop and to collect energies to find possibilities for their transnational list? So it's just a question. We have to analyze all the implications, because we are open these kind of doors, but we don't know if it's a Pandora box open, or it's just a window of opportunity for more active political parties like yours. But again, we don't know. I don't see solutions how to have a secure transnational list which is fuzzy, which has multiple identities, different principles, and also they can, of course, open the door for external influence like the Russian Federation. If they will have an aggressive online campaign for a certain candidate, who don't knows. But this is just my let's say, professional tendency to think in worse scenarios. Something about defense very quickly, speaking in relations with CBU. I think my lecture to my view on the President Macron discourse is very, how to say, is more simple, probably not simplistic, but simple. I think France is now ready to play scenario number 3. That means few of us, if they want to do more, they will do more. So that's the scenario 3, and I think the President Macron is more eager to play the idea of coalitions, and I just want to raise your interest in this area, because there are already studies. I saw a study from the European Council of Foreign Affairs speaking about the Europe of coalitions. So I think France is not thinking in terms of multi-speed Europe or concentric circles or something like that. I think France is now in the stage of preparing for a Europe of coalitions. It's a more dynamic stage of interactions with the entire Europe, and I think France is ready to play multiple coalitions frameworks in order to speed up a little bit the process of refunding the entire European Union. I don't know if Romania is ready for this kind of play. So it's not anymore about the defense or security, it's more about the political aspect of these preparations. But again, until Sibiu, we need to clarify this at the political levels, political parties, and also at the national level. If we have enough resources, visions and strategies to play multiple coalitions game with other nations. In November, in 14th of November, President Juncker just contradicted what he said in September about the 6th scenario. Now I think he decided to organize a task force for proportionality, for the scenario number 4. And if you look at the press communique, he already describes in this task force that he would like to have more work done by the Commission for the scenario 4, which means everybody doing less but more efficiently. So that's the scenario number 4. So President Juncker, I think, is somehow gave an answer to the President Macron answer with the scenario number 3. We will see. I think Matei was very optimistic about the scenario 6 or 5. My skeptical analysis is that we will have to play the scenario 3 and 4 as a combination, or I don't know. We'll see what is coming up after that. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, because we mixed a lot of things, which de facto they are not so much mixed, because everything is in this direction of the European Union. And if you allow me, I would like to intervene a little bit on everything, because it's quite a lot of things that have been said. First of all, coming back to the question that the Senator brought about, let's say, how to deal with parties which they are not pro-European, or they have a completely different agenda. I must say that looking back in 2014, it was the first time in my career where I saw a kind of open market, how to pick up more MEPs from wherever in order to become the second, the third, the fourth group in the European Parliament. It was a shameful solution and a shameful situation, because normally you are in the European Parliament in a party because you have common values and you share a common program. And if not, you should not be, because it's against the rules. And not only that, you are also abusing the European money, the public tax money of the thing, in order to try to do something just because you want the power, you want to have the speaking time, you want to be among the main planers. I don't want to blame nobody, so I will not talk about the rest. I will talk only about my group. In 2014, if we arrived to be the sixth group in the European Parliament, it was because we said a lot of no. We say no to Beppe Grillo because the individuals, they were okay, but when it comes to him, he was practically negotiating with Farage, and we told him, I sent him a letter saying, sorry, you cannot do both. We are completely different, you have to make a choice. And we lost 17 MEPs because of that. But it was a good choice, because we kept the unity of the group. We lost a few others. I will not go by nationalities, or I will mention nationalities, but I will not mention where they went. On, for example, to Portuguese, which they were very much, I would say, I'm sorry to be too progressive, but that's part of they were very, very shy when it comes to human rights, when it comes to LGBT rights, when it comes to important issues, and we say, no, no way. And other groups, including also progressive groups, they took them up. So what I would like to advise is when you are running for the European elections and you want to choose a party where you want to be affiliated, or a group where you want to be affiliated, really to put clear conditions. Because if not, you can find yourself with neighbors sitting next to you in the plenary where you have absolutely nothing to say. This is one thing. Second thing, merging the European Commission with the European Council. We don't have a clear position, but I would like just to go in the other direction. We don't have a clear position yet. But what happened with the European Council, after the establishment of Van Rompuy, where I remember 2009 telling to my president, Daniel Cohn-Bendit, Danny, it's not normal that Van Rompuy have meetings with Sarkozy and Merkel before the official meetings. And they come, the two leaders, Van Rompuy behind running, and after you had the European Council. Something is going wrong. Something is playing, first of all, the two big countries, how they dominate, but the rest, they are cuckolant. They are there, they go on something which is already everything done. And not only that, it's not only everything done, but they do them in closed doors. There is no transparency. There is no accountability, public accountability, what's going on in these meetings and how the things are organized. And then the European Parliament has zero power on that. We were in the middle of the economic crisis and the European Parliament had less power than you as citizens. It was a scandal. And not only that, national parliaments. Where are the national parliaments? Nowhere. Only Bundestag. Only Bundestag because they give the money. All the rest, even not the Dutch, even the Swedish, or the Denmark, which they have very good committees on European affairs, accountability, or nowhere. So, if this has to continue like that, of course we don't want to continue like that, because this is not democracy, and this is not bringing the citizens towards the institutions, and this is really a shame. So, if that is the logic, we need to reform. If you merge them, there is a point that the man mentioned before, you mentioned before, that what is the role of the one or the other? So I will say, as a first reaction, I will say no. But the European Council should come back on its initial role, which was giving guidelines and not deciding behind closed doors, because that is undemocratic and that is absolutely impossible. Now we come about the taboo national parliaments. And I must say, the national parliament is not a taboo, is a challenge. We have to reform the European Union and the future for Europe, giving really a new role to the national parliaments, because you have to have, as parliamentarians, your word to say on 70% of the decisions that they jump after as implementation to your member state. You cannot be clones. You have to be active part of the process. And only like that, you break the anti-European feeling, because you take your responsibilities and a specific role in the European project. If not, if I'm a citizen and my parliamentarians have zero role to play, and my Prime Minister goes back and he says, I managed this because of me. Maybe he said exactly the opposite in the week doors with the European Council. Of course, I will take distance from the European project and I will say, I don't want them. So, new role, I will not bother you with the ideas we have. I mean, if it is a second chamber, if it is whatever, I don't want to bother you on that. But we cannot anymore have the dilemma. If we go towards the national parliament, it is nationalization. No, it's Europeanization because you need a new role and you need to take these people seriously. They are campaigning, they are elected, they are democratically representing their population and not only the European parliaments. And that is a new challenge, and I'm convinced that if we do that, we will get much better results. Now, about the speeds 1, 2, 3, to be honest, we should not have first-class, second-class countries, first-class citizens, second-class citizens. We have to go together. But if there are issues where, if we don't solve the problem of the unanimity, and indeed, very well you mentioned it today, because you have a very high level of knowledge, and I really thank you, you invite me because it's really a breathing thing. I mean, you know everything, and better than us. So the question is, if you don't change the rules, if you don't break the unanimity, because with 27 or 28, how you can make things work, then you cannot block everything. You have to have reinforced cooperations. And the reinforced cooperations, maybe they will create a new dynamic. I give you the example, the financial transaction tax is a very good thing. It is done via the reinforced cooperations. And therefore, thanks God we have these reinforced cooperations because never you create the dynamic or take the question of the European prosecutor, which is reinforced cooperation because only 20 countries, they decided to join. And by the way, I would like to tell you that we have invited the Laura Condruta Covey in the parliament together with all the group and our group to do things with her because we really want that this is working. So that is not a matter yes or no, what is a matter how you combine things. We are in favor of having a minister for economy. We are in favor of having a new minister for a new function. Minister for social issues, yes, because it cannot be only economy, it should also be social issues. We are in favor to give the initiative to the European Parliament to co-legislate, but I have no problem at all that the national parliaments take the initiative to make proposals, and of course that should, we are talking about the green card, so they should be able to make proposals, but of course one country cannot block the rest or cannot decide the rest. And I wanted only to make a last point, because if not you will get tired, about the European Citizens' Initiative. This has been an instrument which we believed alone. Finally, the citizens close to the decision-making if you get 1 million of signatures. I must say is not working because there are a lot of bureaucratic issues, and then it's half dead. And I must say that if the European Citizens' Initiative from the other side, which we want to reform and we want to make it really work, is used as the alternative of the referenda, and if the referenda is Great Britain, with all respect, and what we saw as a result, or the Dutch, that they invented a referenda on the Ukraine agreement, a technical thing which I never read, nothing of that, and you ask the citizens, are you in favor of this, yes or not? And the citizens, they don't vote about that because they don't know about that, but they vote yes or no to the European Union. And they vote against the Ukraine referenda. And after Rutte, 2 years later, he had 1 year later, he has to say, sorry, we are in a kind of majority, we cannot do too many things. So practically, you do a referenda, you cheat your people, you go back, you say sorry, and then, of course, this also the question of the European referenda or the national referenda should be thought in a more honest way, I mean, seriously honest, because even in my group we have the taboo to say national referendum or European referendum. No, in which direction, what are you asking, and which kind of democracy you bring towards your citizens in order also to have a clear respect of what has happened with the result of this referendum.
Okay, thank you. And, thank you, thank you. Your intervention reminds us that politics is not only about intellectual ideas, but it's also about passion. And thank you for that. And for reminding us that we are actually, I mean, we did our best to play the German cards here. I mean, being very rigorous with the program and the schedule. Actually, we are not able to do that. Okay, let's do it the Balkan way. The floor is yours, and there is no priority of the 5 or 6 topics. So you're welcome to intervene on any of the 5 topics. Do you want to intervene on?
We are very
I'm doing very bad as moderator.
I mostly agree with all that Vula have said, and I would add that what is very important is not only European Parliament, but all the Parliament. It's very important that a member of a national parliament involves themselves inside the European policy. We have some powers. They are in the European Constitutional Treaty. So we must use that. I've passed a recommendation for Europe telling that some at the European Parliament, because they do not have legislative initiative, that's only the Commission, want that. Some European national country want that. I say, okay, we can create a Parliament European plus X country, national parliament country, having together the initiative for a new law. We don't have to run in a conflict between the European Parliament and the national parliament, because this is the same electors. If we want to put the pressure, to put a civil war, we must say, okay, this one are better than the others to decide the law. We have to decide, we have to initiate together. And just one thing about the 5 or 6 scenario from the Commission, in my opinion, I say it very clearly, it's bullshit. Number 1, number 2, number 4 is the same thing. It's exactly the same thing. Do not change anything. Reconcentrate the project on the single market, or stay at 7 and concentrate. It's not exactly what the Commission have done during the last days. What is good is 3 for 5. 5 is unrealistic today due to the unanimity system. We must, on the question which need unanimity as defense, we must go with a group of countries who want to decide, because we will not have all the country. After that, when we create that, and we have so many examples, and Bula give some of them, where we have begun with a group of countries, and it becomes something for all the European Union. So this is rhetorical from the Commission. It's always the same bullshit proposal they do, because we must to be clear on the goals and what is at stake in Europe, not say, oh yes, we can change nothing, or we can change a little bit, or we can do the same thing we do, or we can do what we have done yesterday. No, we want a project. And I must underline that the third speech of the Union State at the beginning of September, for the first time, Mr. Juncker say something about Europe, clear. He has been elected, he has been Spitzenkandidat without any clear. He say, oh, it will be more simple. We do less regulation, less normalization, less standard. Nice. The first thing he has done is to suppress all the project on the environment, on air, quality of air, and so on. So simplification is not to less regulation in the street. It's to put away what is about environment because some lobby didn't want it. It is not a clear policy. So we want another kind of presidency, and the merging of the Council, European Council Commission is something crazy. It doesn't exist. The future of the council, the European Council, is to become a Senate of Europe, not to be the executive with the Commission. Oh, where is the Parliament? Where is European Parliament? Where are national Parliament in that? Nowhere. So is it democracy? No. I think it's a not interesting proposals. It's something, just a new gadget for Europe.
Questions here?
In summer of 2006, a few months before Romania get member of the European Union, I took part, also here in Timișoara, to a conference, and one of the guests was Jacques Santer, the former president of the European Commission. And it was a big discussion about economy, about the no borders or free transportation of the goods or people. And I asked him a simple question. All the people thought it was a silly question, but he looked to me, he came to me, he put the arm on my shoulder. The question was, what brings us the European Union? It was a few months before we entered there. And he came to me, and most of the people laughed, and he said, boy, you know, the European Union brought us in the last 60 years the peace. The peace. At that time, nobody thinks peace. Peace is something that we are born with. We have it. No, peace costs. And now my question to all of you, to Mrs. Scott, to Mrs. Tsetsi, and also to Mr. Catolin. Do you support, sure, it's harder to answer, Mrs. Scott, do you support that European Union will have a own army? Or do you support that the European Union will have a common political, foreign political? What regards China or Russia or United States or Canada? Because I don't know if you know, we Romanians, we need visas in USA. This is my question.
There are a few points I want to make which go back to some of the other points which are made, and they are all linked. So everybody has always said no to multi-speed Europe. But what do we have? We have multi-speed Europe. That's the reality. Some are in Schengen, some are in the Eurozone. We've just heard the new defence cooperation, the new public prosecutor's office, some are in, some are out. The reality, and there's a good reason why that reality exists, and it's because if you have to wait until everybody agrees, then you have a problem. If you have mechanisms which remove unanimity and in effect force member states to take an action that maybe they don't want or their citizens don't want, then you begin to create real problems. And I don't want any other country to face what the UK is doing now. And don't believe for one moment that what has happened in the UK could not happen anywhere else, because I think you are wrong if you think that. And you have to be really careful about forcing countries to a decision. And the other reason is that if you have to wait until every country is in the same position of readiness, you never make progress. And I think the euro is an exact example of that, because the choice there, as we heard earlier, Greece came in before Greece was ready. And we had a choice. I mean, it was Barroso's political choice to allow Greece in. But if we said no multi-speed, everybody or nobody, what would be the choice? No euro, or you allow a country in when it's not ready? And you can say the same for everything. So there is good reason why we have multi-speed, and I think there's good reason why multi-speed needs to continue. Because what we have to understand is that for all of us share a passionate belief in pro-Europeanism and in its force for good. But in order to bring people along, we've also had to move along on a functional basis. And it's always been that the progress we've made as Europeans has been where there is a good functional reason, starting with coal and steel and moving on through. And it's for that reason, because I think we have to see Europe as a journey, we have to be very careful about upsetting the institutional balance. It's fragile, but it works. It might not be tidy, but it works. And I think proposals which talk about, in effect, merging the Council and the Commission and having the same president, I think these begin to step into very difficult constitutional waters, which will end up absorbing an awful lot of energy of the EU in a way that is meaningless to most citizens. They'll say, what are they doing? You know, I'm using a food bank because I can't feed my family, and you're talking about whether we merge these things. And I think that will simply, further alienate people. So then when it comes to this question of peace, I mean, you are absolutely right. It's the single most important thing that we have, and the EU has a good story to tell. Your question about the European Union own army, I think we have to distinguish between the European Union and Europe. So I personally am very much in favour of more defence cooperation, and I think post-Brexit the UK will be part of all that. But that's not the same thing as having a European Union army, and I don't think that the institutions of the EU are set up in such a way that would make that a practical possibility in the way that we understand. So cooperation for sure, you know, working together on procurement, but the idea of this army, who would declare war, who would mobilise it, who would direct where these... I think we are so far away from being able to answer those questions. But you know, who knows down the road, but for now, no.
So there's another question here, Julian, please.
Well, I'm very much into gender equality issues, and for me, the transnational list is an opportunity to make something revolutionary, meaning daring to have a 50-50 or 60-40 quota on men and women in order to achieve more equality in our societies. I think that stable societies and prosperous are those societies which are empowering women. So I think this is an opportunity to do that. And I wonder, what are your thoughts on creating an European consensus on having that at this, with this occasion of a possible transnationalist initiative? So I would appreciate the opinion of all of you. Thank you.
Thank you. On the first question about European army, defense policy, and all the rest, I have really to be honest with you. My group is one of these groups with also a lot of peacekeeping people, and it is not so easy to talk about that. So we have been quite critical on a lot of matters, but at the same moment, when we look around and when we look the role of Trump and foreign policy, the instability we have at the global level, the fact that you have neighbors like Erdogan, you have neighbors like Putin, you have neighbors like, we can go on with a lot of countries, and that the biggest ally, US, has what it has as his president, so practically you cannot really count on the relations in a different dynamic. I will say personally, for geopolitical reasons, I would like to see the European Union to be united when it comes to foreign policy, because this will reassure a lot countries like yours, countries like mine, countries with difficult borders, and not only, let's talk about Baltic states, where practically they are very much worried. This is one thing. I don't want really to talk about army because, as you explained before, they are two different things. But we have a vice president in the European Commission, which is the high representative. And we should really give her all support to talk with one voice, because there is nothing more embarrassing than having different games, geopolitical or economic games, when it comes to the other partners. That, for example, we are talking about sanctions in Russia, and at the same moment, some countries, they invite Putin and they try to make bilateral deals. That is not only a shame for the specific country, which I don't want to name, but also it is a shame for the European Union, because we lose all credibilities, because we are not serious. And I would like really that this role and this lady, which she tries to do some things, some serious things, or where the space she has, that we are able in this perspective to talk with one voice. Because the question of the human rights, it's something that we cannot compromise, not only inside the European Union, but also outside the European Union. We cannot have a double language, because if we are having double language, then you will have this Orban, you will have others which will say, what's going on? I mean, you see, you are not saying nothing to them, so automatically you give to these persons the possibility in the European Union to do exactly the same. So we really need to be serious when it comes to the human rights, and we need to be serious when it comes to the energy. Because we are not talking about energy, but energy is a huge geopolitical and economic instrument which has been used and misused and abused to the hell just for political and geopolitical reasons. And that's the reason also why, now I'm coming a little bit more green, the question of the energy independency, the question of the renewables, the question of how the European Union will become independent from Russia and from the others. It is an important issue. It's not only an economical issue. It is also a matter of keeping the Europe serious when it comes to foreign policy and not playing double games, because that's not serious. About women, to finish, I can only make the very long list of things we are doing about equality, about 50-50, 50 plus, whatever. To be honest, sometimes my group is doing too much about that, but at the same moment, I think that it's completely logic, because I have been a little bit astonished when I came this morning, with all the respect, to see too many men and very little women, but now it's a little bit more balanced. And and to be honest, that really society needs that, needs to give equal opportunities, needs to be able to promote women, because they bring a different eye in the society, and one is not against the other. But in order to do that, it's not only a matter of 50-50, it's also a matter which kind of conditions you create in the public services, which they will allow the woman to be able to run, to be able to make trips, to be able to have a life next to the family life, to have a professional life, because the societies before they evolved, and I don't think that they should evolve so much that a mother is not a mother, the system should be able to allow to the women and to make career in the same moment that they are following their professional life. And I will also say that that this is something that I believe needs laws. And even if sometimes my feeling is, oh my God, they choose me as Secretary General because I'm a woman and they need this, that's not always very nice. But maybe sometimes is good, because with some macho attitudes, maybe you will never get a woman. So you have to give the possibility to the people to discover other realities and other sensibilities, and therefore the quotas is important. And by the way, to finish on that, it was an initiative taken by one of the commissioners in the previous legislature about how to put women in powerful positions, in managerial positions in the European Union. And it was Mrs., which is now in the EPP group from the Luxembourg, lady Ready. Poor lady. I mean, she tried to contact us. We helped her. You know the countries which they block it. You will not believe it. Northern countries. I mean, something impossible. You think that the Greeks with the macho, they will block it. No. They were northern countries, the northern acts which blocked this legislation. And we make a big campaign. We are not giving up at all, but only to say it's not only a matter of quotas, it's also a matter of how you follow up in terms of legislation and in terms of the daily life, public services, and all the rest.
Thank you. I just wanted to comment on this question of gender representation, because I think it is really, really important that women are well represented in all areas of public life, not just in politics, but also in business. And I've changed my mind about some of this. I've always been opposed to quotas. And the reason I've been opposed to quotas is that my experience with many women, and I would include my own experience, is that quite often the problem is one of confidence and a sense that, maybe I'm not sufficiently qualified. And so I always worried, and this is a genuinely felt worry, that if you had a quota, you would leave a woman saying, I'm not here on my merit, I'm here because the quota says. And actually, that's why many of the northern countries opposed the company board's legislation. It's not because they don't think there should be women, but because of this question. But I have started to change my mind on it, because after decades of all sorts of different initiatives, we still don't have good representation of women in public life. And sometimes if something isn't working, you just have to say, well, okay, we have to do it differently. And I think there is an issue about visibility and role models. And if people don't see women in those positions, if women don't see women in those positions, they don't think about it being a job that a woman can do. Whereas, and that's why your point about this morning, that there wasn't a woman up here, and this is not a criticism of you. All of our political parties have done this, where you just get panels that are full of men, and then you say, why aren't the women, where are the women? And they don't come forward because they don't feel included. And I mean, at ALDE, we have an absolute ban, even on external participants who have all male panels. And we're telling them, no, you can't come. I mean, it's a bit awkward if somebody drops out at the last minute and we go, oh, we've only got men. And then but we've had to take a real stand, and that's not just about tokenism, but it's about really saying, you have to have women visible, or else the other women say, actually, this isn't for me.
There of a 50-50 panel, okay? I'm fine with that. But let's think about being more, provocative, and let's think about the opportunity of the transnational list in terms of quotas. I mean, maybe it's a good idea to promote in the same time a transnational list system and a 50-50 quotas system? Maybe. Okay.
That's they use all the way to put more men. When we have regional constituencies for European election, we should have, with the law, we had 50-50. And we have, for the French representation at the European Parliament currently, only 42%. That's why also I am in favor of only one circumscription, because you sure you will be 50-50. And for the transnational law, for countries we don't have this parity law, we can put it in it, because it's very important. I say that very often. People ask me why you are so, you put the pressure on the gender question. I have the chance to be a widowed man with 2 children to take care, and one of them is handicapped. And I must say, in the French Parliament, there is no help for that. All my money goes on the guard and the safe for my young children when I am at night working at the Parliament to be present, to do my job the best I can. And that's incredible that we have a law for equity, but we don't have any help for people who have young children. So all the people are 60 or 70 years old because they do not have to take care of children. And most of them are men at the Senate. And it's something that we can admit. Just one thing about the defense. I don't have to explain how the proposal from Emmanuel Macron is very focused on this question, because I think we must come back always to the beginning. When so many countries, after the end of the Berlin Wall, enter a new East country, as yours, enter in Europe, the first thing they've done is to ask the entrance in the NATO. Why? Because there were no proposals on defense in Europe. We refuse. We have built Europe only on single market and things like that. And so all the countries first enter in the NATO for the defense, and after ask to be in the European Union for the economical advantage. So how do you do a European really on a politic orientation if you missed the question? All the European countries admit, I think 10 years ago, that we have to put 2% for our 2% of national product for the defense. Only 2 countries do that. Even France do not do that. So the question is now, it's Mr. Trump, and he's right, asks, why don't you pay for your defense? But he wants all this money to go in the NATO. Today, when we see his policy, we must say, no, okay, we have to keep the NATO, but the money we have to put to reach 2% must be in a European policy. But we must do that because the offer of Europe for the country, part of Europe or entering the country, must have a political view. We can't be only a single market, an open single market, and we have the same problem with the industrial policy because we put the pressure on the concurrency policy, saying that, oh, it's good for the consumers to pay the less, but we produce nothing now today. When we want to create an industry, a strategical industry, they say, oh, no, it's impossible to help strategical industry because you don't have states or the public budget don't have to interfere only about the defense industry. You don't have to interfere in that. And so we are delayed in confrontation to the United States and now China. And so we have to recreate and reform also Europe on the way we can have state investment in the new industry. Or we will be only a market, open market, and then we will die, in my opinion.
Okay. This discussion in the last 2 hours were quite amazing. I mean, it was quite consistent debate. And I was remembering right now Murphy Law, which was saying about if it's about politicians, no matter what they are saying, it's about money. And listening, I was thinking of that. 1 month ago, I was in NATO office in Brussels, in order to understand exactly what it's about with this new alternative of eventually European army and how does it function actually. And I had the chance in 2 days to talk with generals working in NATO structure from Turkey, from USA, from Canada, from Germany, from Romania, of course, and somebody from France. And asking exactly these questions. And my final feeling for their aggregate position was NATO, it's already here. NATO, it's already here. It does exist. Create an alternative army. It's like to try to invent an alternative to the hot water, for example. I mean, we have the system. Okay, it's a matter of which way the expenses are directed. And this is a different discussion, but would be in the system. So in my perspective is that this mechanism, like PESCO was developed, it's a necessary and useful one. But the idea to try to create a different structure, to try to overlap the system which is more or less running. Okay, it's a difference between Europe as a member part of NATO and European Union as one of the institutional instruments in this story. But I don't have the feeling that the direction is to create another structure, but to improve the working mechanisms for the running system. For at least this is my perspective, according with what I heard and what I felt in the NATO visit. Because this is always the simple exit. Let's create our own toy, and we'll be good. I'm not convinced we'll be good, because the problems will move from the NATO umbrella to a smaller maybe umbrella. But the problems will remain there if the way the money are distributed are not or used are not clarified in the existing mechanism. I mean, we're just creating a new commission, we just get a better killing of the idea, in my opinion. Okay, and the second issue related with the gender quota. I think here the European experience was always like trying and error. We try not to use the quota because it's the feeling that you are there just because you are a member you are part of the quota. But the results doesn't prove spectacular. I mean, just the idea that women will become part of the system and naturally the parties will promote more women didn't work. So maybe using the try and error mechanism, maybe to try as a pilot or as more extended strategy to use some quota maybe on some of the institutions could be an experiment to see what will happen. Because, okay, maybe the first wave will be not so performant, but if you are looking back to the American experience with the people of minority, it was shown that the first black guys in the institutions were quite performant because it was a pressure to prove you are the first lawyer, you are the first doctor, you are the first engineer in a sort of position, and their need to perform was obvious. So the experience shows some success. Maybe if we have this approach, we'll get amazing results. I'm quite optimistic talking about gender balance. Here is not a sensitive issue because the education is more or less not affected. The quality of education is not affected by the gender, at least in European. Okay.
Do not come back because you allow me to say these last comments. I have some problems, but okay, we do it public, we do it privately, but if we have the occasion. But I wanted to say about the question again, coming back on the defense, because I believe that we put the question of foreign policy defense in one thing. The other thing is, what are we doing with the existing rules? For example, on the arms control, on the sale of arms. And I really think there is quite a lot to be done in order also to create legitimacy in the one way or in the other you want to go. So for us as a group, we put a lot of attention on that and a lot of effort because we know very well that some of the EU member states, they are selling arms, or they did it in the past without some, let's say, real checking on where these arms they are going. I know this is a taboo, but this is something to face. The second issue, and to change, is about money. The second issue is about the spending. One of the reasons why my group, among the other reasons, were critical is because they have, we can prove it, they have been taken budgetary lines important for the citizens, for other issues, for social issues, for educational issues, for research issues, they have been slowly reduced in order to create this new fund. And I think that when it comes to the perspective of the revision of MFF, where you mentioned, there we have to put everything on the table, where we want to invest, who pays, and not doing this exercise under the table in a not transparent way. And my last point is a personal experience I had in 2011. And I think that is also important to put it on the table because of the debate, defense, arms industry in the European Union. From a very direct source, more direct than that, it's impossible, we knew that when it comes to the austerity plan for Greece in 2011 with Papandreou, and Daniel Cohn-Bendit went publicly on that, let's say it was a real blackmail in the back door from Germans and also from French, from Sarkozy, telling that or you buy what you promised, or if not, we will be even tougher when it comes to the austerity measures. And I think that all this, and it is true, it is the case. Daniel said this publicly, and we got the very direct information because people knew that we will go publicly. I think that in all this discussion, we really have to add the ethical dimension, because if we don't have reforms on that, if they are first agendas, second agendas, third agendas, national agendas, then really we are going to the wrong direction when it comes to foreign policy, defense policy, and all the rest. So just only to say that the things are very much linked and that we have to be extremely, we have to see the things in a global approach and be careful of the cost.
Thank you very much. Ok, hospitalité romain.
Oh, merci. One thing is that we need something coherent in our policy on armament. Why? Because in France, as in other countries, this is not the government, our national government, who decide what we buy, but that's our production companies. We produce arms. We say we have to be competitive on the international market. You have to buy our copters, even if we don't need that. The result is that in Europe, we have 136 systems of armament or equipment for conflicts, where there are only 32 in the United States. When you want to have a coordinated action with some 6 or 8, as in Mali, country for Europe, you don't have the right armament and you don't have any possibility of a good connection between all this kind of armament, because France buy to the French armament industry some gears that they don't need but to help them. So when we want to coordinate, well, in France we have intervention everywhere, but we don't have the transportation, the massive transportation for troops. So we have to ask to the Canada when we want to intervene, and we don't have our own industry. So we spend too much money for a poor result in this kind of armament. There is no connection. So the first goal, and that's why we want to do, and also why Germany also changed its mind, because 5 years ago they do not want to do anything. They've decided to go there, because also Great Britain will be out of Europe. I hope not, but it could be, I'm afraid, certain. And so we have to have a better coordination for that. That's why we need that first.
Okay, for introducing the idea that actually there is no chance to more integration of the defense policy if we are now discussing the integration of our political community. And just a short historical reminder maybe, back in the 50s, immediately after the signing of the Paris Agreement, of the Paris Treaty on coal and steel community, there was an attempt to building up in the same time the European defense community and the European political community. And we all know, unfortunately, it was Assemblée Nationale, the French parliament, that didn't ratify that initiative. But it's not for the first time in the European history integration that we are discussing actually the project of more integration in the field of defense and the political community also. And yes, once again, unfortunately, the Ukrainian example is probably the best one. I mean, Federica Mogherini was in such a poor, she was actually, in a way, betrayed, may I say that? I mean, the Minsk agreement was something negotiated explicitly by France and Germany and not by the European Council. And that was such a shame for the idea of a common European foreign policy, actually. Okay, we have here maybe not the last question, and last interview. Do you want to intervene also? Okay, yeah, thanks.
Okay, so it seems we have consensus. I don't know about unanimity, but it seems we have consensus that multi-speed is here, and it is here to stay. Though, to contradict Mr. Gatolin, I might say that doing more together might be bullshit, but it's beautiful, aspirational bullshit. So we might hang on to that. So in this context, we do live in a multi-speed Europe, and USR's position is clear that we need to shift speed towards the engine, as it's called. But to do this, we need reforms that, well, if we play our cards right, we might make a coalition government or be in government by 2020. But to make the sustainable reforms that we need to be able to join the Euro and Schengen and all the select clubs that make up the first speed of Europe, we need national consensus. And all of your countries have shifted national consensus towards Europe, towards the better or the worse in the last few years. And do you have any advice on how can we build this consensus? How do we shift the narrative towards more Europe together? Thank you.
No, I think the first thing is not to speak of Europe in the political debate. That's what we have done for 5 or 10 years in France after the financial crisis. And that's why we had an increasing of the crisis and the fact that Europe in France was blocked. So we have to discuss, but we have to listen also those who are against Europe to understand the argument they use and to find the counter-argument and finding the way not to have, what I said, only slogan or small sentences about Europe, but agreeing the fact that sometimes things are complex. The European Commission, the European Council, and also the European Parliament are not perfect. We must admit that sometimes we have problems. We can't say that what most of the pro-Europeans say, oh, it's okay, it's wonderful. You know, the European institutions have been built step by step, especially when there were a crisis. It was not a positive creation, it was a reactive creation. So the institution, the organization, the global organization is a little bit baroque. And as it is baroque, it helps, the construction is not stable. And we have to admit that. And we have to admit that without also this baroque building, there will be nothing. But we have to rebuild this building in a organize something accurate to the situation and the future of Europe. But we must admit that something doesn't work sometimes in Europe, but not saying, oh, it's okay, it's wonderful, or we don't say nothing about Europe. You have the right to criticize Europe because Europe is not perfect. It's not an anti-European act. It's a proactive act if you give some positive or ideas to solve the problem, in my opinion.
I think the idea of a British representative telling you how to build a national consensus would just be more than any of us could bear.
Yeah, exactly. It would be a good example of British humor, exactly.
So,
I'm sorry, hello. I'm Martin. I'm from the youth movement of En Marche. So we came from nowhere 18 months ago, and then we've got the president and we've got the National Assembly. So big effort. And just one remark, and I think it's general from all of you, including a little bit André, but we haven't talked about citizens and what do they want. In all what we've said, it was driven from the top, from the plan of Juncker, from the plan of Macron, and it's a very high level. So we've been successful because we've built the plan based on what people told us they wanted for France. What was the project? What was the platform we needed to build? We're going to restart that for Europe. We're going to start in France, and we would like other partners and other countries to do those democratic conventions in their own country to know what people want. And then from there, I think we can rebuild the plan. But as long as we are building scenarios from the European Commission and from the top, I'm pretty sure we won't be able to explain clearly to our citizens, this is what we will do. So just a quick remark, I think we need to come back to there, and you as a young movement, keep that in mind, that you need to build your consensus, your national consensus, based on what people are saying, our citizens are saying, because elected member of parliament, elected member of the European Parliament, their mandate is coming from them. And it's not because you've got your mandate that you could not listen to them anymore. That's it.
Okay, since I'm not a member of the parliament, I'm a simple citizen. I mean, may I be the voice of the citizen? And well, I will conclude my role as a moderator of the debate. Thank you for your interventions, and I will leave the floor to the president of the party for the concluding remarks. And let's say that this is only the beginning of a beautiful friendship, and it's not about Casablanca, it's about a movie from the Balkans, Mir Kusturica, Black Cat, White Cat, and hopefully we're going to have more occasions to discuss all these topics. Mr. President, the floor is yours.
So first of all, it was much better than I expected in the morning. So this is this is definitely your performance, and thank you to our guests, which proven it was a good idea to have this debate. Thank you all of you for being part of this event, and the liveliness of the debate proved again that the subject and the topic is an active and alive one, and an interesting one. And I do appreciate your last intervention, because one of my lines in today was, how can we succeed to make European issues appealing and tempting for citizens? And this is, I think, our most provocative challenge for the next period, and for USR, being the party coming from the civil society, also 1.5 years ago, this is one of the further challenges. In the last part of the event, I want to switch to Romanian and to read a resolution we are proposing to you as a sort of result of this debate. And this resolution will be distributed and promoted in the media as a public debate. And I will switch to Romanian for a clear understanding. I had talked with the translator. You can use the speaker. And using the European Kutuma, I will read just the main topics of this resolution, which has more points. And the final, your applauses will confirm or not if you do agree to have this resolution adopted by this conference. So the text sounds like this. Noi, membrii Partidului Uniunea Salvați România, participați la conferința europeană privind viitorul Europei, este și viitorul României, primul pas spre Sibiu 2019, în urma dezbaterilor cu oficiale ai partidelor europene, am adoptat următoarea rezoluție pe care o supunem dezbaterii publice. Punctul 1. Credem cu tărie că locul nostru este în mijlocul familiei statelor europene, ca parte activă în procesele și transformările care aduc o Uniune tot mai strânsă. Punctul 2. România trebuie să se alăture nucleului dur economic și politic al Uniunii Europene. Punctul 3. Solicităm Guvernului României să ducă o politică conformă cu principiile și valorile Uniunii Europene, în special în privința garantării statului de drept și a independenței justiției. Susținem concluziile, punctul 5, susținem concluziile Conferinței Națiunilor Unite privind schimbările climatice de la Bonn, COP23, din noiembrie 2017. Reamintim de sprijinul necondiționat pentru păstrarea patrimoniului, combaterea degradării mediului și oprirea tehnologiilor poluante la Roșia Montană. Punctul 6. Inițiativele în domeniul apărării la nivelul Uniunii Europene, cum ar fi structura permanentă de cooperare PESCO, lansată în noiembrie 2017, este binevenită și considerăm că trebuie să fie complementară eforturilor NATO. Reafirmăm necesitatea unei înțelegeri care să pună accentul pe beneficiile cetățenilor între Uniunea Europeană și Marea Britanie în cadrul negocierilor pentru nedoritul Brexit. Nedoritul nu apare în rezoluție. Punctul 8, și nu întâmplător este punctul 8, sprijinim inițiativa listelor transnaționale. Sprijinim de asemenea instrumentele democrației cetățenești, cum este inițiativa legislativă a cetățenilor. USR a lansat recent o importantă inițiativă cetățenească sub titulatura Fără penali în funcții publice. Considerăm de asemenea că aducerea la zi a cadrului legislativ românesc și acordarea lui la instrumentul modern al inițiativei europene a cetățenilor trebuie să fie o prioritate. Pledăm pentru o reconsiderare a culturii în societatea românească ca vector de dezvoltare a țării în contextul mult promovat al economiei bazată pe cunoașterea. Cultura este o prioritate la nivel european și trebuie să o transformăm în mod real și în România. Punctul 12 și ultimul, ne angajăm să contribuim cât mai mult la aducerea cunoașterii despre proiectele europene în casa fiecărui român. Este o întreagă paranteză aici, o întreagă legendaristică urbană legată de banii europeni și proiectele europene. Și acestea sunt unul dintre instrumentele acelea care fac Europa vizibilă în viața cetățenilor. Și ultimul paragraf din această propunere de rezoluție, Europa nu este celălalt, și am aflat cu toții asta astăzi, Europa suntem fiecare dintre noi, alături de partidele europene prezente. Ne angajăm împreună pentru Europa unită, prosperă, solidară, cu respect față de cetățeni și mediu. Europa este casa noastră a tuturor popoarelor europene. Vă mulțumesc pentru un eveniment excepțional. Vreau să invit în față pe organizatorii acestui eveniment de la filiala Timis și de la USR. Vă rog, haideți. Organizatorii evenimentului și colegii de la USR vă invit în față.